love me so much more than I could ever know. Your love is deeper than this world will ever show. And all of life's beauty shines around this moment now. The sky and the cliffs, they seem to change my life somehow. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, 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 I will never be the same, never be the same ever again. Well, here I am waiting, Lord, my life is just for you. Please unfold all the plans that you would have me do. And if all the world's just a breath and nothing's here to stay, and all of the love we feel will save us anyway. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same, will never be the same ever again.
Hello and welcome to another SDAQ&A, our second for today. I'm on a roll. Two reasons. One, I'm super keen to get as many of the Des Ford Glacier View series, season 2 episodes up and out into the public arena in YouTube, and the reason being Facebook is deleting all the old videos, and they've only been available inside the private Facebook group until now. So that's why I am putting a lot of effort into getting all of season 2 out there before all of that happens. Gives people a chance to join the Facebook group also. Go back and find some of these older ones, and if you made comments on them, maybe cut and paste them if they were really relevant and pertinent to the topic. So today we are going to kick off, get right into it. Oh, the second reason was because Europe and the UK kind of wake up around now, and it gives them a chance to watch the show live as well. So those of you that are joining us, welcome. Our conversation today is with Lowell Tarling. If you're listening on the podcast, it is 2025, and you'll be thinking, hang on a second, weren't we just in 2020? Because we are re-uploading. We are uploading for the first time to the podcast, season 2. So those listening, if you're on the podcast, we're about to go back in time to 2020, where I did an interview with Lowell Tarling, and it was part of the series on Glacier View and Des Ford, and all sorts of other topics in between. This was season 2, episode 19, and it's a replay. But I'll be sitting here in the background watching again, and it's as fresh as ever. Honestly, it feels like these programs are as relevant today as they were 5 years ago. So, I hope that you can stick around and enjoy today's program, or if not, watch it later, of course. Now, as with my recent interview with Rick Ferre, Dr. Rick Ferre, we had some sound problems, and this interview with Lowell was literally done, I think, the next day, and the same problems existed. Not too much in the actual interview, but that cuts off halfway, so I will need to just reconnect part 2, and that'll be easily done though, so it's not a stress. So here is Lowell Tarling, and he's an author. You'll get to know him by just watching the interview. Creative type. He's written several books. He has ghost-written several books. He wrote one about Adventism, The Edges of Adventism, I think it's called, and many more. Really great creative guy. He left the Adventist Church and has worked and hung out with some pretty famous Australian authors, artists, painters, and poets. And he resides just out of Sydney, near the Blue Mountains, and is very much involved with just, easing into retirement, and still does a lot of work with books and poetry, and you can find him at various festivals sharing his words of prose and poetry. Here he is, Lowell Tarling, and myself 5 years ago around this time. Enjoy, and please write in the comments. Sometimes I can bring up what you're saying onto the screen as well. Sometimes it just takes a minute to play catch up, but it'll start any second now, hopefully. Welcome to another SDA Q&A. It's Peter Dixon here. My guest today is Lowell Tarling. How are you, Lowell?
Very well.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
I love when people recount stories of you. There's kind of a theme of admiration that comes through, and people seem to remember their first memory of seeing Lowell Tarling. And I'm one of those people as well. I remember in the early 90s, I'd sort of been chatting to Bob and you and Genna and the guy Bryant as well, I think Phil, about, trying to... Paul.
Yep.
I remember trying to kind of convince you guys to get all those albums from vinyl onto CD, and sadly at the time it didn't happen, but it's great that it's happened now. But anyway, we chatted, and you came up, and we were going to do some recording, or we were talking about something, I can't remember now, but you'd booked a room there at the top of the pub in Morisset, and back before mobile phones, and you said, I'll be over at your shop
Right.
at such and such a time. And I just happened to be walking down to the takeaway as you were coming across the road, and your hair was out there blowing in the wind, and you're looking left and right with this kind of confidence, and and it just stuck in my memory. So you make an impact on people.
I was ghosting Michael Chamberlain's book then.
That's what it was.
That's why I was in the pub above Morisset.
That's right.
I was there for 5 days, then went back for the weekend to my family, and then came back and had another shot at it, you know.
That's right. And that's when you contacted me and said, hey, let's just catch up. So I think we just caught up in the shop for a bit.
I think so, yeah.
Hey, can you turn your volume up a little bit on your computer? It's a little bit quiet.
Yeah?
That's better, or lean in closer, yeah.
Okay, well, it's on 9 or whatever.
Yeah. Hey, so it's really great to have you here, and we're going to discuss Glacier View, but I'm interested in also mentioning your book, Edges, which has become known, but the official title is it The Edges of Adventism? What's it called again?
The Edges of Seventh-day Adventism.
Yeah. And I remember in the 80s trying to read Walter Ray's book, The White Lie, and I couldn't read it. It just was so confronting. So I put it away for about 10 years. And then I was reading Ron Number's Health Prophetess, and I could sort of start reading it, but I had to put that away. And then I came across your Edges of Seventh-day Adventism, and that was a read that I could really cope with. Because you kind of stepped back a little bit when you wrote that. You gave the details, but you also kind of put it in a way that made it a lot easier for me to digest, I think. So I really valued that book. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to write that? And then let's dig back into Glacier View. And one quick thing before we start that. Before we came on live, you were mentioning that your early Adventist years were actually in London.
Well, that's where I was born.
Yeah. Right, I didn't know that.
And so my mother's side was Seventh-day Adventist. They converted in Mauritius, where Mum was born. And so the kind of thing that they picked up was not like the Australian Seventh-day Adventist.
Yeah.
In London, the big deal was the Saturday Sabbath, which was such a nuisance.
Especially for a young artistic muso kind of person.
Well, who wanted to watch the Lone Ranger on telly. So it was really all about that. And the idea of having a prophetess called Ellen White, I mean, I'd heard of her, but that wasn't an issue in London at that time. Mum always said in her French accent, she wrote some very good books. And she had Steps to Christ and Desire of Ages that I don't think she read. And that was about it. And then I came to Australia and there's all this Ellen White and investigative judgments and all this extra stuff.
What year was it that you came here?
I came out in 1960. And the only vegetarian I knew in London was my Uncle Les. My mum and granddad and all that, they weren't vegetarian. And
wow, but that explains a lot of you. A lot of people that have come out from England in the 60s brought with them a unique kind of love of music and shared it with the Australian community. And it explains, like when Bob recounts his first memory of seeing you on the bus or the train to Strathfield, I remember thinking, it sounds like this guy's been dropped out of England and then landed on the train, and it turns out you kind of had.
Yeah. And being a Seventh-day Adventist in England was, it was a pretty carefully guarded secret. Somewhere where you vanish on Friday nights and reappear on Saturday nights without telling your friends, because no one understood what the thing was anyway.
No.
So you'd say you were Jewish if you got cornered, or you just have to make something up. No one would believe it.
Hey, well, look, what we'll do is let's take the story from there. You know, just as you came into Australia, your emergence, not emergence, but your finding out of Australian Adventism, and how that led up to Glacier View, and how that led to Edges. Just, I'll let you unpack that.
Well, I came to Australia, and I went to Woollahra. Do you know what an opportunity class is?
No.
Class for gifted, talented, an advanced sort of.
Right.
So I came out and they put me in Woollahra Primary School in one of those classes, and I was in there. And then I was looking forward to going to university or whatever it is, and then I drew the ballot for Asquith High School because of where we lived, and I was at Woollahra because my father taught at Sydney High, you see, so that kind of worked. But then Asquith High School was there were a lot of it was a bad school. There were bad kids. There were some people had committed rape, and a lot of people have probably beaten up on people and had switched. I don't know. It was just a bad school in the early 60s. I was hoping for Normanhurst, and so my parents then said, well, you can't go there. And that's how I finished up at the Seventh-day Adventist High School.
Wow. Where
I was thought of as a delinquent person, and because I was always mucking around and not turning up at church. I don't know, all that.
But compared to where you just come from,
well, I don't think anyone would have thought I was delinquent unless they were Adventists,
Yeah, that's right.
I was watching telly on Sabbath or whatever the thing is, and not going to church. One of the interesting things about church is if you can get into a big one like Wahroonga Church, no one knows where you are.
Yeah.
So you turn up at church in the morning, you find your friends, Alan and Clayton, you tell your parents you're going to have Sabbath lunch at Alan's place, and you kind of vanish. So you skip all that Saturday church stuff, and then you tell your parents you go to the afternoon meeting, you meet up with your girlfriend, and you take your shirt off because you got to church, and then underneath you've got a sort of a striped shirt like Brian Jones. You take that off, put it in the bushes at Turramurra Station, and go and watch a rock and roll show at the Star Club. Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs,
yeah,
BB Limited, and then you get back home and it was church. Yeah. It's terrific. You should have seen Billy Thorpe, Mum.
Billy Thorpe was the preacher. What year was that? What years are you talking about there?
When I started seriously wagging church, I was about 13. Well, the Beatles had come along, so I was 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And
yeah.
The whole of my sixth form, I hadn't even been inside a church.
Yeah.
Just turned up and vanished. My father was made an elder.
Yeah.
What he said to me, your father, I'm sort of going, I missed that.
What kind of prompted you to remain involved and to eventually write Edges? Because I'm often asked this as well. I'm interested in what was your motivation, because a lot of people at that time, by the time they'd left school, they're not going to church, they're going to rock and roll concerts, they're going to the movies, they're reading interesting books. They just disappear, vanish, leave the church, never to be heard from again. What inspired you to kind of stick around a bit longer?
Well, I got my teaching qualifications. You asked if I had a PhD. No, but I do have a BA Dip Ed, and the Dip Ed was from Newcastle Uni as it is now. And then I taught for the Catholic school in 1974. And then I was literally headhunted by Gordon McDowell, who offered me a job in the Adventist school. and that sounded good because that'd get me back to Sydney, where I knew a lot of people. So I said yes to that. And then one of the things that one of my subjects was called denominational history. Now, denominational history is pretty boring because it says that Pastor such and such went to Madagascar and converted lots of people and had a glorious victory and so on. And I was getting the idea that it was just a series of glorious victories. And what makes a good story, mate, is conflict. You haven't got if you haven't got conflict, you haven't got a story. Yeah. And so I started looking into these Brinsmead people, well, way before that, Snook and Brinkenhoff, names like that, and going right back to 1844 when the thing started. And I was looking for conflict. And because I was writing a lot for church magazines, or for anyone, actually, but for church magazines, I was writing about denominational, trying to make this subject interesting. And then I put together 6 articles on church conflict. Wagner and Jones were in there and so on. And I asked Pastor Parr about it, and he said he'd publish them in the review, what is it called, the Herald, the Review and Herald, in that. And then whoever was the conference president said, no, they can't be published.
Oh.
Well, you don't say that to me. And so, woof, it became a book,
You and I have got that similar thing where sometimes you're involved with something because people have said you are not allowed to be, more than because of your desire to be involved with the topic.
That's right. No. But you see, when I started it, I didn't know that the Ford thing was going to blow up.
No.
So I didn't write it as a response to Des Ford. That actually came. I was in the middle of it, and I thought, okay, I'll go along to these meetings. And so I went and heard the meetings and saw Standish and Ford off at the same stage, and took my notes on it, and that became chapters in the book.
Yeah.
But the book wasn't because of Des Ford.
No, you'd already started it beforehand.
I grew to love him,
Yeah. So did you go to Avondale College at all?
Yeah, sure. I got expelled, yeah.
So tell us about your Avondale College years. And that was just before the Newcastle year, is that right?
Yeah.
So what year were you at Avondale?
I was there so I finished high school in 1967. Then I left home.
Now you've got a book called
1967
that comes with the little vinyl record. I've got that book. I love it.
Yeah, good. No, that was my last year in high school.
Yeah.
And then I left home on the day the exams finished because, sadly, I just wasn't getting on with my parents. They were older than me, not older than me.
Older than the average parent of your generation.
I was born when Mum was 40.
Right.
And so they didn't understand popular culture at all. And so I left home, went off with Alan Broadhurst, went to Melbourne, and we made a complete hash of it and had to come home starving and emaciated and couldn't get employment. And then go to Macquarie Uni, which was the one I would have gone to, would have meant living at home, and I couldn't do that. And Alan was in a similar situation to me. So he said, well, why don't we go to college? And so I went to college, and then I came back the next year and then met Robbie, who was the reason why I kept coming back, really. And then I got expelled in 1970.
Tell us about that. What year was that?
I was expelled in 1970.
Right. So tell us about that. I was there in 1970. I was only about 8 years old, and we were just about to go to Fiji. But Dad was a lecturer that year.
He was. I remember him. I liked him.
Yeah,
He was
yeah.
nice. He was nice to me. Anyway.
He's still going strong.
Oh, well, say hi.
I will. I will.
No, he was nice.
And yeah, I would have been a little whippersnapper. So what happened to cause the expulsion?
I had a stand in the Domain. So at the end of the year, I'd come home, and that, as a way, literally, of earning money, I used the St Ives High School, where my father was teaching, Gestetner, and ran off some poetry. And I had a stand, and it was called the Nothing Stand. And I'd sell my poetry, and I'd preach nothing, believe in nothing. I don't know, just whatever, anything, you know. I didn't know what I was.
Creative.
Yeah. And so then early in, it was March in 1970, Dr. McDowell got onto some of the poems that I'd written, and he told me I was a nihilist, and I didn't know I was anything.
You were preaching not to be anything.
I wasn't anything, which is pretty much what I am now, nothing, you know. But anyway, so there was a poem called Black, and it finished up, when all is all and all has ceased to be, there will only remain black, black, black.
Oh, I love it.
Nihilism. And nihilism, that sounds all right. I'll be that.
So what did you say in response to his statements?
Well, one of the poems had the word breast in it. And he said that was obscene. And I said, what, like Song of Solomon? You know, so I was cheeky, but not outrageous or anything.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I should have been, but so what? And it was a great year. It was a great year, because then I saw Tully and the LSD Fog Light shows, and, you know, bands, The Who, and, you know, just all this stuff. And Marcel Duchamp at the Art Gallery of New South Wales. I went to all poetry gigs, and I got up at the Domain and had to get up and had an act.
That's fascinating. And so you'd kind of, be at college, were you an indoor in that? Was it just the 1 year?
No, it was 1968, 69, then 70 I got kicked out.
Right.
When I came back in 71, but I was a different person then, and that's where I ran into Robert and where we did Freedom and all that.
Right.
And in 71 I roomed with a homosexual and a 6-foot carpet snake, 2 budgerigars and 7 zebra finches. I walked into my room and there's birds everywhere. You know, it was great. And I played a lot of chess. I kept my head down, and I'd worked out the system.
Just back to the 68, 69, 70 years.
Yeah.
Because it's weird. I literally was there, and I remember often standing on the little hill outside the Auto and looking down into all the crowd of you guys, and there was long hair and flares and platform shoes, and there was people having conversations with Bibles open, and I just remember thinking, wow, this is an interesting bunch of people. And then often on a Sabbath, Mum and Dad would have people over for lunch, you know, and I'd sit there in the corner and listen to these fascinating, colourful people. And sadly, a lot of them, you know, ended up leaving the church. But in that time period, just tell us a little bit about some of your memories of various lectures that you attended and anything that inspired you.
Nothing inspired me.
Right, you were going out of the college grounds and getting inspiration elsewhere.
All the time.
Were you taking people with you, or just off on your own?
I actually had a motorbike that I'd stashed. Which was pretty crazy, because I really didn't want to get expelled a second time. And when I was expelled, the guys who were expelled with me got expelled for having cars on campus. Actually, they went in first, and then when they walked out, they said, you know. But anyway, and that was where I went to poetry readings. I'd be, Robert and I were friends, and we'd also befriended people called Terry and Bev Wilkinson, who were older than us, outdoors, out in the Morris area, had a car, drove us to jazz places, poetry readings.
Oh.
But I will say this, seeing as you asked me to say something about someone who did inspire me, I always felt that Dr. John Cox was a particularly good English teacher.
Mm.
And so I'm very grateful to him. It sort of came to me later because I was thinking about what hopeless English teachers I'd had. You know, the one at college didn't even like Carl Sandburg, and you know that. But John Cox was. He taught me in high school and at college. And he taught me English grammar in my first form in high school, which is now called, what is it, Year 7, I think. And I was good at that. Then he taught us Shakespeare, Merchant of Venice, which is politically incorrect now, Henry Lawson, and the English Romantic poets that I didn't like much. I didn't like Ozymandias and Ode to a Grecian Urn, but still, you know. And then I was liking Allen Ginsberg, and I remember I told him that, and I gave him a copy of Howl to read. And I mean, I must have been deliberately provocative because he couldn't possibly like Howl. It's got, well, you know the poem. I don't need to say what's in it. And then he gave it back to me, and he didn't say anything bad about it. He just said, well, there you go. And I thought, right. Des Ford was a bit like that too.
So Des was there at that time?
Des was there at the college, yeah. He was there in 68, 69, and he was my lecturer. And
What memories do you have of him at that time?
Not much. I disliked him as much as I disliked
Everybody else, you had a very full curriculum elsewhere.
I liked him later.
Yeah. So bring us forward a little bit now. You've done your Avondale studies. You've done your studies at in Newcastle. You've been out teaching a bit. You've started writing this book. Tell us a bit about now as you start to kind of appreciate Des Ford and how that leads into the Forum of 79 and then into Glacier View, and a little bit of what was going on in your mind when you became aware of the politics of it all.
Well, I met Robert Wolfgram at Avondale College. He came in and I hadn't seen him since high school, and I'd always liked him then. And his guitar playing had got much better, and mine had gone nowhere. You know, basically, I learned guitar, could play it in 3 months, and then have never got better ever since. You just play C and you hit it as hard as possible, and you don't change chord unless you know. And so I wasn't there to jam with him or anything. He was
just a quick aside thing though. That day we met, you know, must have been the 90s, I think. You actually did play me a couple of songs in the shop on the guitar, and I was struck with how great the songs were, the lyrics, and how the guitar actually did accompany the lyrics and the singing as well. You kind of had this Nick Drake kind of vibe about your singing and your lyrics and the playing, and Nick Drake meets Bob Dylan meets, you know, Nick Cave and stuff. And I remember thinking, boy, this would be a good album if we could have 12 of these songs together with the guitar. So I think you always saw guitar maybe as an accompaniment to, you know, so it's no point getting better at it if it's this there to be an accompaniment to words and melodies.
No, I thought my singing was worse than my guitar playing.
No, I liked it. So sorry, I digress. So back to you're meeting Bob, you're getting involved with music. he's come leaps and bounds with his guitar playing, and you start writing songs together around then?
He started accompanying me to poetry readings with Bev and Terry Wilkinson in Newcastle. So he skipped college and I skipped college. We go to this thing, and I got Bev to read my poems, and he played the backing, and I just sat back and just listened to the show, and it was really amazing. Beautiful woman with a lovely voice, just reciting my poems, and Robert just making it up wonderfully. Just had the touch, you know.
So she'd recite your poems, and he's playing like a background guitar.
Yeah.
He's in there. Nice. Whatever happened to them, Terry and Bev?
They went to England, and I don't know anything else.
Right. So, so share again a bit more as you started coming into the Glacier View era and the book and the music. They're all intertwined.
Well, then we wrote Freedom, the musical, which had Bev on the narration, Robert writing the songs, me writing the lyrics, which I felt very comfortable with, comfortable writing lyrics, but not singing or doing anything. And it was about Jesus. And around that time, there was the Jesus Revolution. So everybody was religious. It was, people forget this, but it was a religious era. And the reason people forget it is because the Taro and the I Ching and so on isn't thought of as religious by a lot of people. But everybody in those days had a religion. A lot of my friends had Maya Baba as their guru. Martin Sharp had Tiny Tim, and I didn't. I read the Bhagavad Gita and so on. That didn't grab me. And Robert started talking about Ford and Bryn, you know, those sorts of subjects, not explicitly, you know, but gradually more and more and more. And so I thought, look, I'm 21 or 22, I'm going to get married, and everyone who's married has got a religion and they've got a politics, you know, time to grow up, Lowell. Well, I never really did. So I still haven't got politics, I still haven't got a religion, and but anyway, I did then. So, well, the religious bit anyway. Then I started listening to Des Ford, and he moved me because he made sense out of everything. He said, the Bible is about this. You know, it's actually a library. It's 66 books, isn't it? And they all, if you read them, they all don't say the same thing. You've got, you know, just different. It says thou shalt not kill here, and then it says kill everybody there and draw a plough over their thing and kill their cows, and, you know, and then it does a thing about gays and says how naughty gays are. And then in another section, there's a whole gay section about David and Jonathan skipping around naked and kissing each other. And the homophobic King Saul going, what have I got in this son, Jonathan? You know, you know, curses on you, you know, on your mother's nakedness or whatever Saul said. So, you know, it was all quite disjointed in my thinking. And then Ford comes along and says, well, it's actually about the gospel. Well, all this other stuff falls into line if you get that centre, you know. And I remember once one of my friends was having a problem with drugs, and his mother said, Lowell, you know Des Ford, could you get Des to talk to him? I said, okay. So I took him to see Des Ford, and we went through half an hour with Des Ford without him ever using the word marijuana. He used the line, when the great God comes in, all the little gods go out. And he never demeaned himself, if you like, to use any of those little silly specifics.
Interesting.
Mm. And that impressed me an awful lot. Mm.
And did it help your friend?
I suppose he doesn't smoke grass now, if that's...
So what happened during this time? You've started writing Edges? Because you said you'd started on it, but it was kind of separate to Des. You're kind of now being inspired by Des. Is he starting to be included in the work?
Well, no, he's not, because the book begins with 1844. So it begins with the breakaway movements from the earliest Seventh-day Adventist church. The book isn't about the Seventh-day Adventist church.
No.
About 140.
It's about the edges, all the breakaways, yeah.
Breakaways, you see. And so we had to go through all of those, and then we went through the next lot. And then finally, towards 1978, 77, 78, then Ford became part of the manuscript. But he'd inspired me before that.
Mm.
Mm.
So, did you hear his famous forum lecture, sermon, talk that happened October 27, 79, I think? Did you hear that soon after?
No, not really. I heard him as often as I could up until 1978.
Right.
And then after that, I went to see him in 1983, I think, at Macquarie Uni. Mm.
So as you come in to 79, was All My Friends Are Sinners released in 79?
1978, I think.
Oh, okay. I heard it 79, but that's only because I was in Cooranbong and the news travelled a little bit slower back then. I got my copy. Mark Menzies and I were the same age, and David Menzies, his older brother, had a copy. And we were just blown away. Like we'd been exploring, we'd been trying to find Christian rock music. We had no success until we came across the Res Band, the Resurrection Band. Do you remember them? Kind of like a Bachman Turner Overdrive meets AC/DC meets Black Sabbath, but writing Christian music, and they were really good musicians. And they had an album out called Colours, I think, or True Colours. So I heard that in 79, and then we thought, wouldn't it be great if Adventists were writing this kind of music? And then we heard All My Friends Are Sinners. Now, a lot of the songs on that, you've written a lot of the lyrics. Did you write all the lyrics for that album?
No, not all.
So now Father in Heaven is one of my all-time favourite gospel songs, and I'm going to try and sing it tonight in our campfire session. You wrote the lyrics to that, didn't you? And Bob wrote the music?
In the 70s, as a school teacher, I wrote a series of plays, short plays, for my classes, really. And there was one called Jonah. And I wrote it with Lester Silver, who I don't know if you know him.
Yeah,
He's a great guitar player now.
Yeah. Right. I know the name.
Well, he wrote the music to all of it because Robert was in Melbourne with the Street Preachers.
Right.
I actually asked him who should I get to work with, and so I think he recommended, or my wife recommended, someone said Esther. I'd like to say something about Robert though.
Yeah.
In the 60s, there was a tide of pop culture that we were all kind of part of. And I suppose in the context of Adventism, I was an early adopter, but not outside of Adventism. Mm. And there were a lot of bands, Adventist bands. Tony Roy was in one. You know Tony?
Yeah.
But the thing was, all those bands that came out of the churches were Seventh-day Adventist people who were playing pop songs,
Secular rock songs and stuff.
all the time, always, Gloria by them,
Yeah.
whatever. And my cousin Stuart, he was the first person that I'd seen play guitar in church. He taught me guitar. Then he'd be singing Elvis ballads, Old Shep, I Can't Help Falling. They were always that. And it was Robert who put together gospel and rock and fused them together.
Yeah.
Before that, we had rock there and gospel there.
Yeah, that's a very interesting, very important thing to note.
Yeah.
Because that combination within Adventism created a kind of a whole movement of my generation literally listening to you guys. We were playing all the rock music like what you're talking about. And then we hear your album, All My Friends Are Sinners, and we go, oh, well, let's just start doing our own original rock music and add words. And so I was in a band called Jordan, and I started my own stuff. Mark Menzies, Brett Ellen, we started doing our own stuff. And then through the 80s, where we'd kind of, the church suppressed the knowledge of what was happening with the politics and stuff, it was just all music. So there was an explosion in the 80s that you guys started, and thanks to Bob for blending the two together, because there's so many bands in the 80s and 90s that really you could all trace back to that one album, and some of them may not even be aware that they were, were linked to that. Let's come to the actual Glacier view, and by some accounts, you kind of you didn't seem to be following the politics so much as it's leading up then with the Concerned Brethren and that kind of thing. You were?
Yeah, not Glacier View, but the Australian scene.
Yeah.
The Standards, the Concerned Brethren, all of that. In this country, yes.
What can you tell us some of your memories of what was going on then with that?
Well, Clifford and Standish would. I just think they made fools of themselves, arguing against Des and Brinsmead. I mean, they were just flawed every time. And I remember once seeing Bob Brinsmead. It was in Newcastle in a theatre. I'd never seen him talk before. And Standish was there, and he just went through the guy. And Standish was just standing there like he just had nothing to say. And, it was, why would you bother? I mean, he was respected as a doctor. Why with theology, And Des Ford did it differently. There was always that gentlemanly thing in Des Ford.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he just flattened the guy.
Yeah. Was Brinsmead more of a take no prisoners kind of debater?
Pretty much.
We're trying to get Bob on the show. He said yes, but he's not really wanting to do it via computer. So I might have to drive up there and do it by computer in front of him. But I'm hoping that it happens because it'll be an interesting conversation. So you're watching these guys kind of in many ways have their ideas and beliefs kind of deconstructed. Why do you think the movement that began then just continued on gaining more and more momentum and power?
Well, Seventh-day Adventism, like any religion, is never fixed at any point in time or place. So I told you what I experienced in London, so being a Seventh-day Adventist kid there was nothing like what people are telling me are happening here with nutmeats and whatever. I mean, I was going to the cinema and watching rock and roll and reading, it was just different. And Seventh-day Adventism went through a number of changes. So first of all, to be a Seventh-day Adventist, you had to, back in 1844, you could smoke, of course, until something like 1881, I think, when Ellen White had a vision saying it was all evil.
That's interesting, isn't it?
And
They're all smoking even after the church had officially formed.
Yeah.
And chewing tobacco, I think.
Oh, maybe that was it. And that was, I think Joseph Bates was a smoker, and he thought nothing of breaking the law of the land by getting black people from the south, putting them on the slave train and getting them into safety up north. So they were protesters, you know, they'd be out the streets tomorrow, these guys. And they all believed in the shut door.
Yeah.
So you were there in 1844, then you'd be in heaven, and everyone who wasn't, then. So that was that thing.
Yes, yeah.
Then it went through other changes, made an organisation of it. But the period between, in the pre-1950, in the 20th century, I can't think of the dates, and M.L. Andreasen was the big voice then, and that became kind of idealised, because that was when the church institutionalised the charisma of Ellen White.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't alive anymore.
Yes, that's.
But how do you capture it? You capture it in books.
Yeah. So that kind of then put her on a pedestal and created this kind of, from 1919 to 1959, this kind of golden era.
Absolutely. And that was where Standish and Clifford were at.
Yeah, they wanted to get that back.
They wanted that back.
And in many ways, that movement has grown and grown, and now sees leadership in the highest places that goes along with that too.
Well, I didn't muck around with theology because I'm not a theologian. So this investigative judgment stuff, I mean, I don't care whether Jesus went into a small room on the 22nd of October in 1844 or whether he went in on the 23rd of October. I just couldn't care less. If he wants to go into small rooms and spend a couple of 100 years judging, well, that's up to him. Doesn't bother me.
Did it ever occur to you that perhaps having an additional judgment was redundant when it's spoken of actually in the Bible, and the atonement of Christ at the cross and this kind of thing?
Yeah, probably. I don't know. I never felt particularly unsaved or anything. Put it this way: if there is a heaven, and I'm in with the good guys. You know, can you imagine? They all come down. Jesus comes down, tumbling down from the sky, and goes, "Lowell, you're in the bad place."
Yeah.
Hang on, what did I do?
Yeah.
What did I do? You know. Yeah. I mean, Robert Wolfgram would go, no, can you come here with us, mate?
Yeah. I think...
I don't do anything bad, you know.
No. I think...
why would you burn me? Why would you burn me, Jesus?
I think you'd get there to the pearly gates and God would say, Lowell, you know, of course you're coming on in because you were your own person. That's what I wanted everyone to be.
You're a bit of a laugh. Come on, Lowell. In you go.
There's a great cartoon meme I saw a while back where Elvis is on a cloud, Elvis Presley playing a harp, and he's looking down over the edge of the cloud, and the comment says Elvis wishes he was in hell with all the other musicians. So you're kind of heavily involved with the recording of the album, which then was called Bob, with your Persecution Games, with All My Friends Are Sinners, and those albums kind of go from 78 through to about 81, 82 or whatever. But in August 1980, Glacier View happens. You're aware of the politics going on. Did you have an emotional reaction to him being defrocked?
Oh, gosh, yes.
So tell me about that.
Furious.
Right.
Absolutely furious. That's why Persecution Games has got songs like Fighting Man and Bureaucracy Blues. Don't say I ever loved you. I never did. I was thinking, what is the worst thing you could say to someone?
Yeah.
Don't say I ever loved you.
Yeah.
Never did at all. And that was me saying that to the Seventh-day Adventist Church,
Yeah.
because
That's an album I think people really need to listen to and really listen to the lyrics. Because I found it confronting when I first heard it, because I came from loving rock music and the vintage classic rock, whereas that album is almost a punk kind of Saints kind of vibe to it. And I found the music confronting. It took me a while to kind of sit back and go, hang on, what are the lyrics? What is it saying? And I think it'd be very interesting for people to go online, find it, and have a listen, because it's got some really interesting lyrics in it that reflect on that time period.
Well, side one, I mean, this is all William Blake stuff. Side one is the Songs of Innocence, and that was like the nice side of Christianity. And then the next side, side B, is the Songs of Experience, where we start burning people at the stake and bit of Desmond and all those things. When I wrote Edges of Adventism, that book, I was really trying to be fair to everyone.
Yeah.
When I wrote Persecution Games, I wasn't.
No. When did Edges come out?
It came out in about 1981.
And when did Persecution Games come out?
Oh, about 1985. But you see, Edges was completed in about 1979.
Right.
It was the public having to get it out. It took that time. And then Persecution Games was completed probably when Glacier View was actually happening. It was probably,
yes,
that was when it was being,
Bob was saying the other day it was written then but wasn't released due to getting funds and stuff till later.
That's right.
So you're angry, you're furious. How did you kind of vent that to the people around you outside of writing the songs, the lyrics for that album?
Oh, well, me and my wife, we just resigned on the day.
Wow.
And the letter's published in the back of Edges somewhere. We just resigned. I didn't want to be a lapsed Seventh-day Adventist.
Yeah. So you hear about this when? Because time travel, like the message of it happening wouldn't have been straight away. August 80, when did you hear about it?
I don't know. We were in Birmingham.
Soon after.
Well, not soon. We were in Birmingham in the cultural time. But once we got it, because the thing with Des was he was such a righteous and conservative person, and you look at it and you think, if there's no room for a man like that in the church, where's it? What?
Yeah.
You must feel like that too. You've got the rock band and the hair and all that. Where's your place, mate? If I can't have you,
If I'd been a little bit older, I would have left exactly the same time. It took a long, slow boil with me because we weren't really told that much about it in the 80s. And it wasn't until the early 90s that I started really reflecting on that time and reading your book and reading Walter Ray's book and The Health Prophetess Ron Numbers, and then reading 1844 Re-Examined. And so that's that era from 91 to 97. But then you just kept getting, it's changing, and all the liberal leaders were telling us behind the scenes that, it's coming good, we're doing stuff, it's coming good. So I'm literally 4 years ago, and I'm like, hang on, it's not changing. And when the no vote happened, that was my Glacier View moment. I thought, if women cannot be accepted, my two little girls were only, one wasn't even born yet, and one was, only about one. I just suddenly thought, if I had that same thought that you had, if my girls cannot be accepted in here and they're perfect, beautiful little gems and can't go right to the top of leadership if they wanted to, and they're going to live a lifetime of suppression. So I took my name off the roll immediately then. But you'd already kind of had a lot of a journey going on. So you hear the news some point after Glacier View and you go, that's it, we're out of here. Tell me about that day and what you and your wife talked about.
Well, I don't really like white men in suits anyway. So, the idea of having, this corporation running the show. And they all look like bankers and developers and teachers, and they just look like that. Politicians, they just have that look about them. And I don't like people like that anyway. So, and we're in Burtmagui, hair's getting longer. All my friends are fishermen. I'm a writer by now. I got a literature grant, which sort of saved my bacon a bit, and so my world was becoming. I'd met Martin Sharp, met Tiny Tim, and that whole part of my life was opening right up.
Yeah.
Seventh-day Adventist world was closing right down, and I thought, well, I won't miss you. See you later.
And what conversation were you? Was it Robin you're talking about? Was your
my wife Robbie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you remember having a conversation with her that day?
Oh yeah, she's not.
Was she Adventist?
Yes, nominally, I suppose. She
Was she furious too?
oh yeah, she's still furious.
Right, interesting.
She's I decided I wouldn't deny my roots, whereas Robbie can't stand it if people talk to her as if she's an Adventist or anything like that. Whereas to me, I tried that for a while, and then I thought, oh no, look, I'm different in every other way. Why not just why not tell the truth?
Why not embrace it?
Yeah, just say that that's what it was.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's a big step. But you leave, but you're still observing. You're still seeing what's going on. You're chatting to Bob still. As you saw over the next few years, the 180. Harry Ballas was telling us about that period, 83, 84, through to I think the late 80s or early 90s, where more than your average number of Adventist ministers were leaving as a direct result of Glacier View. Were you, every time you heard that another bunch of ministers had been kicked out or left or marginalised, ostracised, suppressed, whatever, did you get your hackles raised up again each time you'd hear these stories?
Not really. It wasn't just ministers. It was, the best minds of our generation,
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. It wasn't just ministers.
Architects, dentists, doctors of medicine, whole heap of people. And a lot of them were my friends.
Yeah.
They left and I left and we were just fine. And we just put that behind us and just,
moved on.
partied on,
I'm a bit dim. I'd really had the weight of that has not really hit me till just now. I knew it, of course, because a lot of people left.
And they were so easily replaced
Yeah.
because there were a lot of people who were migrants, if you like, who were looking for jobs as pastors and, with Spanish surnames or something like that. And so they got quick promotions and then the other guys got pushed aside and left,
But what a great loss to have people like you and all these creative minds and people that had a passion for the gospel and Des himself to all kind of leave in that period of time. Like Harry's book is very interesting. Have you had a read? Have you had a chance to read that at all?
Harry Ballas.
Yeah.
No, I don't think. What's his book?
It's a study of Adventist ministers leaving the Adventist Church in that time period. He did lots of interviews with scores of Adventist ministers. It's in. I'll tag it in the comments below, and you can chat to Harry about that if you want.
It's not much of a concern to me, Peter.
No, but it's an interesting. What I'm saying is, it's an interesting phenomenon,
Right.
because I'm suggesting that if they hadn't all left, the church would be a much more interesting place to be. People like yourself leaving is a great loss to the church. I'm not saying it's a loss to you, but it's a loss to the church.
Oh, look, it was great leaving. I mean, after that, I got to know Tiny Tim, and boom, that bit just took off. You know,
Yeah.
terrific.
You kind of suddenly came into alignment with the life you were meant to be leading.
I think so, because in the late '60s, my grandma, she used to like Tiny Tim because I had the album, which everyone did in those days. It sold millions and millions.
Yeah.
But she hated Jimi Hendrix and Cream, and so she actually found an album
That she liked.
that she could, because he sang all the old songs. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
It's a fella following me. You know,
He was funny because he was avant-garde and quite, I mean this in a good way, corrupted and quite awake and incredibly interesting person with his poetry and his lyrics. But he would then also sing these very conservative songs that your mother's generation would have loved.
oh yeah.
Tiptoe Through the Tulips.
Oh, absolutely. And Grandma didn't know what he looked like. You see, because it was an album.
He was subversive.
So I just put it on the turntable. You'd say, well, that's one you don't have to take off, you know.
Yeah. So, you know, a lot of people did stay, and they did some good stuff. There was a gap for my generation of young, cool, hip people. That's why we listened to your album.
Right.
And we were like, awesome. In a few years, we're going to be old enough to meet these guys and rock up with them and play music like them. And by the time we were, you'd all gone.
Robert's a musician. I'm really not. But
but I'm talking about that kind of culture, that subculture that you guys had. You had a real, there was that Jesus movement, hippie Jesus kind of subculture that we loved. And by the time 81, 82 comes along, we're starting to play in bands. You guys had all gone. And I've said several times in other places that we literally went from a vibrant youth scene to the only thing provided for youth for probably 3 or 4 years was in my local area was Tuesday night, once a month, table tennis.
Well, they had to listen to the Peter Dixon band then, didn't they?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's what propelled us to go and do our own thing. Most musicians and creative people from that era, we would run our own thing,
Good on you.
and we hobbled along. But then in the 90s, you know, a lot of the Adventists, some came back. A lot of the people like John Den and Lowell Heiss and David Thiel and Ross Cole and these guys, you know, they started providing us with some interesting gospel and Jesus-focused kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I really believed it was going to change. If I knew now back then, if they'd said, look, it isn't ever going to change, it's going to get worse, I would have been gone in '84. And I don't regret things because life's life, you know, you just live with whatever's happened. Yeah. And I've got wonderful friends and connections and, you know, it's been an absolutely fantastic ride. But I remember 84, 85, 86 turning down some really wonderful opportunities because, you know, I couldn't sing Friday night and I had some touring opportunities that I'd said no to. But you kind of were able to suddenly go as quite a young man and explore this realm. So tell us a little bit about post-Adventism for you. You've mentioned Tiny Tim.
Well, I became a writer.
Yeah.
And a ghostwriter. So I've written about, well, I've been writing full-time since 1980. Not necessarily stuff I'm pleased with. A lot of it was business writing, but a lot of it was interesting. Oh, the thing that happened around the same time as Glacier View was the Chamberlain thing.
Exactly.
And I was really involved in that.
Yeah.
Because I ghosted 3 books about that. I ghosted Phil Ward's book. Then he got me to write one on Lindy and her church that wasn't published. And then I did Michael Chamberlain's book. And on top of all that, I wrote 10,000 words for Rolling Stone magazine.
Wow.
So that was a long piece. And so I was fully, and so of course, and you've got the dingo in the jaws of Luna Park and Persecution Games.
Yes.
So that you've got that illusion.
The reference there.
The reference there. And I had a lot to do with the artist Martin Sharp.
Yes. Tell us.
Place.
I
Yeah.
want to dig into Martin Sharp in a moment because I've found him a very interesting creative person. In 1981, I started Avondale College at Avondale, and Lindy was there that year, pre kind of trial and pre this blowing up as mad as it went. But it was a bit crazy, and we were in the same art class together. And she and I were, we'd sit there, like, and with art, you're there. We were under Mr. Durrant there, and we'd be maybe 4 or 5 hours a week down there painting and doing our art. You know, you could go down there and just do whatever you wanted to. He was very, very free with that. So I would sit next to her for several hours a week during most of '81, and that was a really interesting experience. I want to try and interview her. A beautiful person, lovely person.
Yeah.
So you kind of started coming on board with the Chamberlain saga as things heated up and became quite critical. Tell us some of your memories of your involvement.
Well, Phil Ward, I was ghosting for Phil Ward a lot. Do you know who he is?
Yes, yeah. In fact, that's why I said Phil Bryant before, because I got the Phil and the Paul mixed up.
Yes. I was ghosting a lot of his stuff. And then the Lindy Chamberlain thing came, or Michael and Lindy. I remember I was upstairs in our place in Bermagui Way, and my wife said, something's happened. A dingo's taken a baby. And I said, oh, yeah? So what? And she said, you know the people. I went, whoa, you know. So that was the beginning of it. Then Phil got involved, and I was ghosting for him. And so I went inland to interview Nipawin Marty and go to all the Lindy and Michael places. And I've even got a soil sample from where Nipawin Marty, the tracker, said the baby had been put down. And I actually took I've got it in the study just over there. Probably got it Azaria's DNA, you know.
Wow.
And I was staying at Martin Sharp's place, and one of the musicians who lived there, because there were a lot of artists and musicians there, a guy called Al Jones, he said, look, I know the people who run Rolling Stone magazine, and you just happen to be about the only writer that anyone can find who believes in their innocence.
Wow.
So I went and talked to them, and they did believe in their innocence, so they wanted to pursue that. And then I wrote this huge piece where I described the Seventh Adventist Church, far from killing their children. Seventh Adventism is the most boring religion on the face of the earth, I think. Which it isn't, of course. It's
it's full of drama. We've discovered that in this series.
Yeah, the Mormons are the most boring religion.
Oh dear. So when did Lindy release her book Through My Eyes?
I don't know.
Because that was quite a long book, and she'd been encouraged to write a shorter version, but I thought it was good. But no, it was a catharsis for her. Good on her.
Probably late 80s.
So being a ghostwriter, do you kind of resonate and empathise with Fanny Bolton and Marion Davis?
Being a ghostwriter, it's you absorb their smell after a while. It's quite unpleasant.
Do you think that you can kind of step in their shoes as they were ghostwriting for Ellen G. Wyatt? Do you understand how that kind of worked?
Yeah, I wasn't too interested in Ellen G. White. I thought she was, I mean, I don't want to upset people, but I thought she was pretty silly, really. I mean, I grew up in a family where my father was a very, very good chess player.
Yeah.
At the age of 16, he won came fourth in the City of London.
Wow.
And and so, and also I was very keen on Shakespeare. And so when I read Ellen White on those subjects like that, I thought, she.
I mean, some say there's a lot of evidence to suggest that Fanny Bolton wrote Steps to Christ, and Marion Davis wrote Desire of Ages, and they are two books you mentioned earlier.
Desire of Ages came off a book by a man called Farrar, I think. F-A-R-R-E-R. So maybe Fanny Bolton ghosted it,
What are your thoughts, just as a slight tangent here, but in the early 80s, the church was dealing with the Des Ford thing at Glacier View. We had the Lindy Chamberlain, Michael Chamberlain thing. We had Davenport, the great Ponzi scheme that the church bought into. And we had the release of the knowledge that Ellen White plagiarised. And there's been lots of apologetics towards that. Just as another aside, a little tangent, because you are a writer, what are your thoughts on that? Because a lot of people say, oh, well, back in those days, people were copying each other. But the fact is, Connie Berenhausen, the publisher, threatened to take her to court if she didn't take her book about the life of Paul off the shelves, because it was almost word for word to their book that she had sort of copied, and she did take it off the shelves because of that threat. Which is a bit of an admission that they did know about plagiarism and copying, and the copyright was a little bit stricter than one would think. So just from a writer's perspective, would you exonerate her for the copying, or?
No, I'd read Ronald Numbers' book.
The Health Prophetess.
Yeah.
Prophetess of Health.
So I read that, and I agreed with it, but I didn't get too excited because I didn't think much of her anyway.
Yeah.
And I've read a lot of her in the 70s. I did read a lot, so I'm not coming at it like from a position of, So
you weren't ignorant about it, but you were kind of like, so what?
Yes.
Yeah.
So she was a cheat, of course, but there's other people who are cheats too. I didn't think. I didn't have her on a pedestal, so
No.
she had nowhere to fall,
That's that UK kind of background. And I think when we interviewed John Rosier, he was saying the same. He said for him growing up, and he'd be about 71 now, I think, he was saying that the Ellen White influence on the Adventist Church in England was very, very limited.
Right.
So
I'm nearly 71.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Wow. So you're 70 now?
Yeah, I'll be 71 in 2 days' time.
Get out of here. Happy birthday for 2 days' time.
Yeah, I share a birthday with Donald Trump.
I won't say who I share a birthday with.
What, Alistair Crowley?
No, his first name's Adolf.
Oh. When's your birthday?
April 20.
That could be my cousin Stuart's birthday.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And Peter Jensen's wife.
Yeah. But hopefully by association we aren't labelled with via osmosis through the generations.
Well, I share a birthday with Boy George, so that makes it okay.
Hey, so tell us about your experience with Martin Sharp, because he had quite an interest in all things spiritual and religious and lots of symbolism. Tell us about your experience with him, and also a little bit about some works that you'd recommend people dug into a little bit that he's produced.
Well, Martin, really, he got converted, if that's the word, by Tiny Tim, actually. So Tiny influenced him, but he was also, I think, tiring of his hedonistic past. I think when I was in early high school, Oz magazine came out in Australia, and there was the obscenity trials. There were 2 obscenity trials, one in Australia that involved Martin, and then one in London where Martin wasn't part of the editorial, so he wasn't actually involved in the second one. But he had a bad boy image, and of course there was, all of that hedonistic, free love, but you couldn't have that much free love because they were doing a lot of work,
Yeah.
painting a lot too.
That communal living kind of.
No, I really liked him because I spent my teens living across the road from Richard Neville's sister.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and she pointed me in the direction of.
Right.
That was where I was getting all this stuff from, Allen Ginsberg, and
Right. Boy, that's interesting.
Yeah, I'd slip across the road. Mum hated it.
Did you meet Richard Neville himself as well?
Oh yeah, I got to know him very well. He lived at Blackheath before he died.
Wow.
Yeah, so he lived, 10 minutes away from here.
I can imagine you and he getting on really well, actually. In just the little bit I know about him and his interviews and his TV shows and stuff.
Yeah, no, he was terrific.
Yeah.
And Martin, when he was in London, he flattered with Eric Clapton.
Yeah, I remember hearing him talk about that.
Yeah, so and actually, I met Eric Clapton, and all we talked about was the Azaria Chamberlain thing.
Really?
Yeah.
What year was that?
When he came out in 84, 83.
Oh, really? I went to the concert that time he was here. Get out of here. Yeah, it was end of 84 at the Hordern Pavilion.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I was there. Robbie was there. Martin was
Right. Oh.
Yeah, we were all there. And
isn't that funny? We would have been there the same night.
yeah.
I met him that night for 2 seconds.
Yeah. How did you meet him?
Brett Ellum, myself, Mark Menzies, we went backstage literally to the back of the building at the Hordern Pavilion, and we're just standing there, and Don, they used to call him Donald Duck Dunn, I think, the bass player. He came out and he chatted with us for about 15 minutes, then he went on the bus. The bass player, the keyboard player chatted with us, and then we were getting their autographs and stuff, and then Eric comes out, and he's kind of got a bit of a brusque, is that the right word for it? Just, whatever. Oh, here we go. No, he didn't really want to talk to us or anything. And I've got my autograph book out like this, and he's just about to sign it, and Brett sneaks in front of me. We were laughing about this the other day. He sneaks in front of me with his bit of paper, and Eric just signs it, and I go, oh, can you sign mine too? And he just goes, oh, and just like that. And into the bus, and off he goes. But I remember loving that concert, and so you were chatting to him around that time.
Well, he came to see Martin at Wirriam.
Oh my goodness!
So the kids met him, and so he was just there, and then he came back a couple of nights later with the. But we didn't talk much then. And but what I was saying about Martin with Eric was they were flatting together in the Pheasantry in Chelsea, and because Martin had given him the words to Tales of Brave Ulysses.
Right.
Martin wrote. Well, I was in fifth form, year 11, studying ancient history. I was good at ancient history. I got level 1 for ancient history. So suddenly there's a song about ancient history. You've got Robert Wolfram, suddenly a song about gospel. And here's Martin, a song about ancient history,
Wow.
You can't do that with words,
Yeah.
You're supposed to say, I love you, do.
Yeah.
So then I realised that Martin Sharp had done the cover of Disraeli Gears, the cover of Wheels of Fire, written another song with Eric, Anyone for Tennis, and I was a fan.
Mm.
and of course, the fact that I liked Tiny Tim helped anyway. And then on top of that, I loved Vincent van Gogh because I'd read his letters
Yeah.
of Morris Kennedy.
Yes, of course. Yeah, yeah.
So he was the art teacher.
Yeah. So how did he just kind of, as part of the course, was just sharing the letters with you guys?
Yeah, I was trying to work it out whether,
I loved his art too, by the way.
yeah, whether a paperback edition, maybe W.H. Auden's translation had come out in 1969 or 70. Was there some, commercial thing that drew it to Morris's attention, or was it always there? I don't know. And so he was telling us about Vincent's letters, and Martin loved Vincent's letters. That became part of his religious experience. And Martin actually met Des Ford.
Say that again.
Martin met Des Ford.
Really?
Yes.
How long did they chat for?
They chatted for 5 minutes or 3 minutes.
But I tell you what, that would have been an interesting conversation to overhear.
Well, I was living at Martin's place, or staying at Martin's place, and I said, look, there's this guy called Des Ford, and he's taking a talk at Macquarie Uni, and it's about the gospel, and I'd like to go. 1983, so. And he said, oh, I might come with you. And so Peter Jensen, I don't know if you know Peter, but he died this year, sadly. Good friend. Him, me, Martin, we went to hear Des Ford. And then at the end of the talk, Martin came up to him and presented him with a Tiny Tim album, which has got Tiny's face. So it's unmistakable. And it's got some lovely religious songs on it.
Yeah, yeah.
When I Go the Last Mile of the Way, songs like that. And so the things you see when you don't have a camera, Peter.
Oh, I reckon.
Des Ford's walking around with his Tiny Tim. And he didn't know who Tiny was, and he didn't know who Martin was.
He's just accepted this gift.
Accepted it. And,
I remember him saying to me once, or Jill said it, that he didn't immerse himself in the pop culture of the day. So he would have been quite oblivious to the connections there.
No, he didn't.
What advice would you give to young Adventists that are watching today, that are full of hope, that the church is changing, and I don't want to squash that hope at all. Like, I hope I'm wrong, that we're not actually about to have a second Glacier view. But just out of interest, what kind of works would you recommend them to go and take a look at, just to kind of expand their minds a little? What books, artists, poets, music?
Vincent's letters.
Sorry, that cut out there for a second.
Vincent's letters, I think. I like the Tao Te Ching, the book. But I don't agree with any.
No, I'm just saying for advice to expand their mind, not to take on board as gospel.
I think the Tao Te Ching would be good. I think there's been some really good books left out of the Bible. When they had the vote.
Apocrypha.
No. There's about 80 Gospels that are around.
Like the Book of Judas and the Book of Esther.
Like the Book of Judas and the Book of Esther. I think the Book of Nicodemus would be the playwright thing, because Jesus goes up to heaven and goes down to hell, argues with Satan, goes up to, it's just
great
full
literature.
Yeah, it make a good film,
Yeah.
And then I quite like the Gospel of Thomas. I think that's where Jesus keeps kissing Mary Magdalene. So I kind of would like that. And I think the Gospel of Mary says that Mary was 12 when she got pregnant. And, so I think some of these, Nag Hammadi.
Is there a place people could go to find those books in one place?
Well, the ADR
someone collated them.
Well, the ADR bookshop. Oh, yeah. I mean, I've got them. Hang on.
Yeah. I'm enjoying the backdrop there too. Those of you that are watching will have to zoom in later and see what books and albums are there. The third wave.
No, that's all. That's a painting.
Is it a painting?
Yeah, so I
I thought you'd put your
painted
books.
squares like that and nailed them to the wall. You know.
Oh, I love it. It's a great backdrop.
So that's the Nag Hammadi
Oh, right.
and the Lost Books of Eden.
Oh, boy, I'm going to look those up. Yeah.
Well, they're just interesting because they just give you
Just
an angle.
hang on 1 second. It says that for some reason that our interview has stopped. I'm not sure what's happened there. Don't go away. Let me find out what's going on. If you are still watching.
So just give me a minute to upload part 2. We did cut out there in our first interview. I hope you're enjoying the conversation I'm having there with Lowell. And yeah, he's an interesting character because he kind of left the church immediately after he'd heard about Glacier View. I think if I remember hearing that right just then. And that was it. And he's lived this life filled with art and creativity and meeting very interesting people and doing lots of very interesting things with his own creative output. And so it's just interesting hearing that as a backdrop. I loved the story where where Des Ford was given one of Tiny Tim's albums. And as Gillian has said, wasn't into the whole pop culture thing. He wouldn't have even known. But yeah, Google Tiny Tim if you're not too sure. And Martin Sharp, these people, Eric Clapton, of course. Okay, so let's, I'll just have to do it in real time. So I don't know what you see on the screen now. Can you still hear me? As I just find the next part. Yeah, so you can see I had Wi-Fi issues then and Wi-Fi issues still, but I think we have a better signal most of the time now. And yeah, so I'm just finding the second part here, and we'll continue on with by the way, those listening, this voice you're hearing now is jumped back to 2025, and we're listening to an interview I did with Lowell Tarling back in 2020. And it'll be coming up on my screen soon. I have no idea what you guys can see. Here we go. Part 2, Lowell Tarling. And we open it up. And let's forward wide until
Live.
there it is.
We're back on live now.
Okay, so going back to 2020, everybody.
So we had about 150 people watching us live then, and sadly we're just going to wait for people to join back into the conversation. Just give us a few moments to hit the right buttons.
And there is something I'd like to say about, you asked if I was mad at the church or something. Well, yeah, there is one thing that annoys me a bit. It's actually...
Hang on, just sorry to interrupt. Just wait 1 second. I've just got to... We're actually going live, but I can't access it on this. Okay, here we go. I've got it now. Just give me a second. Sorry to interrupt, Lowell. We'll just wait for some people to come back. And I'll just quickly say what happened. Give me a second. Sorry to interrupt. is giving me mixed messages. So if someone could producing this from my shed, and if someone in the house turns on more than 4 appliances, and we're just waiting, and off Van Gogh letters, and you were going to tell us where they could get that, and then you started talking about like the books of Esther and Judas. So share with us those things. We'll go over that again, and then I want to chat a little bit about some of what you were saying during the break.
It's the Nag Hammadi library.
And this is where people can get a lot of the apocryphal books that didn't end up making it into the canon.
Yeah, and the Lost Books of Eden. I got mine from the Adyar bookshop, which is a theosophical bookshop. It's got everything. I don't know if it still exists, but anyway, that's where I got them. I'm not recommending them or anything. I'm not recommending anything really.
No, we're just saying what's some interesting things that people can go and read just to expand their mind. It's not like you're saying go and follow this and you will have a certain path. They're just interesting things, and I think we were chatting about some of the content of some of these books. I think Thomas,
Right.
Esther. Do you remember what we'd said about that?
Well, yeah, Jesus kept kissing Mary Magdalene, and St. Peter gets quite cross about it actually, and he says something terribly sexist. Women aren't worth. And here you are, you're kissing Mary Magdalene, and then another one, Jesus. As a boy, he actually kills a little kid by.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
He just kills him, yeah, and
With magic.
yeah, with magic, and then Mary, the mother of Jesus, was 12 when she got pregnant, and I'm not recommending anything.
No.
I just think people ought to make up their own religion. Whatever will work. If you want Ellen White, have Ellen White. If you want the investigative judgment and Jesus in a little room and judging stuff and so on, and
I agree.
And change from day to day.
Yeah.
Be a Buddhist one day and a Christian the next and a Jew the next. That'll mix up people when you're having an argument.
Yeah.
And I thought no, that was yesterday, mate.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You can't be quoted on something because, well, so what? That's what I was thinking yesterday. I'm a human. I ebb and flow. I change. I think a far more interesting church would be where people gathered together around food and conversation and just hearing people's stories and beliefs and what they're up to right at that moment, rather than trying to get everyone to gather around a defined belief,
I thought the Baha'i religion was interesting because I don't mind going to churches. It's just I don't like getting caught up in conversations or, and if you go to a church, people think you're going there seriously, or all your atheist friends hate you because they think you're becoming a churchy, and all your church friends don't like it because you're not serious enough. But the Baha'i church, you can actually get in and out without anyone talking to you. And what they do is they had people reading from their 9 prophets, whatever. There's Baha'u'llah, Islam, Jesus. They've got 9, I think. And all it is without commentary. It's somebody walks to a microphone, a man or a woman, so it's not banned like.
Not sexist.
And they'll just read without a commentary, and then they'll go back and they'll sit down. And somebody else will do it, and it's so peaceful and it's beautiful architecture, and it's just there at Terry Hills. I like that.
There's a wonderful temple there. Is it near DY? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, the one in Terry Hill. Yeah, just
right.
Yeah,
right.
And you can park the car and you can actually get in and get out. And no one will talk to you, which is great.
Yeah. Just go and have a peaceful experience listening to other people's perspectives.
Perfect. Yeah.
I did record our last bit, even though we'd gotten cut off live. So later on, I'm going to edit because there was some good things you said in there. I'll edit that in for the YouTube version. Um, and apologies again, people are joining us again now, but we apologise for getting kicked off. I'm going to have to try and mention to the household just to leave appliances off while I'm doing my interviews. So you, in the break there, you were talking a little bit about your feelings again of Glacier View and how you were furious. You were going to say something about anger or something. What was that about?
Yeah, I was very angry about Airs Forward, obviously, but you can just hear, you can play the record to hear that. But I was also, over a long period of time, I've been, not say angry, but very disappointed that the church hasn't recognised Robert Wolfgram's great talent.
Mm.
I mean, he's a wonderful preacher. He's done this wonderful music.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, to be fair to the church, he keeps himself to himself as well.
Yeah.
So he doesn't hang out his shingle.
Yeah.
And
Well, I remember in the 90s, the reason I got in touch with you guys is
Yeah.
I just prior to that had a conversation with some young people, and they were talking about my music, and I was saying, oh look, I've been doing this since the early 80s, and I was hugely influenced by Bob Wolfgram, and you guys would know about him and have his album, and they were like, who? Lowell, Tarling, Sally Hilda, and no one knew. But in Adventism, if you talk about pastors from previous eras, people do know, because like Rolling Stone magazine, they keep the memory alive of their speakers, but they don't keep the memory alive of their artists. So I wanted at that time to start a mini Rolling Stone Adventist magazine, and Bob was the first person I wanted to interview.
Good on you. I mean, of course. I mean, I've apostatized, as it were. So I don't expect anybody to like my stuff. But Robert hasn't, and he still goes to the church, and he still defends the church, and he does everything right.
Well, what's great about what we're doing with the podcast is we're correcting that.
Good on you. That's true. That's very true, Peter. Thank you for doing that.
Well, I think what's great is we're building a little community of people that are just interested in each other's stories.
And wasn't it a great interview that Robert did?
Fantastic.
All about organisational sociology. All
Yeah,
these things.
yeah. People like him should be speaking from the pulpit every weekend.
Yeah, I was amazed that he wasn't a sociology lecturer for Avondale College or something, actually.
Yeah. I was saying to Rick Foray yesterday that I think there's a need for someone with sociological background and skills to be placed into every conference office and every union office and every division office, to be called upon to help understand better why things are unfolding as they're unfolding.
Do you really think they want to know?
No, they don't want to know. They'd see that as heretical.
But they're organisations, and organisations self-perpetuate.
That's right.
And
Well, Adventism in the South Pacific division is officially set up as a corporation. It's a Pty limited corporation. In the 90s, it was set up as one.
and they're developers.
Yeah.
They're developers, and they don't pay tax and all these things.
Yeah.
It disgusts me, that side of it. Well, the money side of it just disgusts me.
Well, I remember we raised some money a couple of years ago for a really good cause up in Carbiufa, I think, at the Adventist school.
Wow.
The toilet blocks had been shattered, vandalised, they were disgusting, pulled to bits, the security for the women was terrible. And our Now group and a bunch of other people and some people in the States, so not just us, but there was $10,000 raised. They only needed $5,000, and they went ahead and just totally fixed these toilet blocks on Adventist soil. And I'm thinking, hang on, here's a bunch of people that are fringe Adventists. I thought, and I tried to find out why, but why isn't the church putting some development money into that, some profits into that?
And one of the things you mentioned, the Jesus Revolution, one of the things that is very, very clear is that Jesus was a communist. Very, very clear.
So social democrat.
Oh, he was a communitarianism, if you like, you know.
He and Bernie Sanders would have gotten on well.
Oh, no, Bernie's not much of a lefty. They only think he is in America because Americans think that way. But Bernie's, you know, I mean, you can't be a lefty in a capitalist country, you know, running for parliament. The Labor Party's not left; it's a right-wing party.
Yeah.
But Jesus, he was even telling people to break up their marriage and follow him. Just leave your wife and leave your kids and come with me, and don't worry about tomorrow. And he was beyond money. And I think if you look at Jesus in that way, you'll see he's the opposite of a corporation.
Yeah.
In fact, we all know what he did to the bankers.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah. Turn the other cheek, give the shirt off your back. Do you feel that for you personally, Jesus is a good teacher, inspirational, historical figure, or do you still see him as a divine being and the way to truth and light?
Well, I don't think about him that much, Peter. But I certainly don't think he's a divine being. But the Jesus that impressed me in the 70s was an inspirational figure, yes. But I'd go to things like, I think Robert mentioned that there were a lot of liberation theology places in Melbourne, Jesus Light and Powerhouse, the God Squad, you know,
Yes. Yeah.
like that's for Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, near us, when I was a teacher in West Ryde, was the House of New World, and I'd go to that, and that's where I heard Jack Mundy speak. So if he was in there, you can imagine they were all very left wing. They were into social causes. It was very much a social gospel, which I kind of like, because you've got the Des Ford thing, which is, you know, not that, and then you've got this other one, and together I put them together in my mind, and that made sense. And the idea of Jesus as a hippie walking the streets, and the whole thing was just idealistic, but we were young.
Yeah. Marilyn Stewart asked me the other day just to ask you a little bit about your thoughts on the Jesus movement and its connection with music, and you're kind of touching on that now.
Well, yeah, everyone had a religion in those days, as I said. And the Christians the Seventh-day Adventist Christians in Sydney had salt, share a little truth.
Oh, yes. And was Melbourne had Jam, wasn't it? Jesus and Me?
What? Newcastle had Gate, go and tell everybody.
Oh, I love it.
But it was really creative in the sense that you could, and this is why I started playing guitar in public, because I'd write a lot of words, and I could write my 3 chords and sing them on the Saturday night in a coffee shop. And it was run by in Newcastle, it was run by the church. In Melbourne, I think there was a vegetarian restaurant. You'd have to talk to Robert, but they did street preaching for 7 years.
Yeah. There were huge audiences back then too. I remember there were huge audiences back then too. I remember in my band Jordan, we'd do street preaching, we'd play at all different denominations. There was a real interest in Christian contemporary rock music, and whatever band was playing, there'd be hundreds of people would be showing up. And that lasted till about 83, but I think it'd been going since probably 74 maybe. Remember the old concerts with Phil Keaggy and Andre Crouch and all those guys?
Robert drew my attention to those people. Phil Keaggy was one.
Yeah.
Robert actually played one of those huge Christian stadiums.
Yeah.
He was a support act for Peter Green and
Right.
Leon Patillo.
Wow. Well, all my friends are sinners was actually a huge success in the Christian contemporary music realm, not just with Adventists.
Yeah, it did do well. Yes, it did.
Yeah. So I might just open it up to see if people want to ask any questions because there is quite a big delay. Oh, yes, show us. This is the one that you'd given to
Martin gave it to Des.
Martin. I mean, Martin gave it to Des, and it was that album.
Des is walking around.
Oh, classic. I often think that um, oh, Tiptoe Through the Tulips, just mental blank. The artist
Tiny Tim.
Tiny Tim. I often think when he was going through that paint your face white period, he was kind of honouring Bob Dylan, who went through a bit of a phase like that, or the other way around.
Yeah. Well, they knew each other, of course,
Yeah,
because they started out together in Greenwich Village, and
yeah,
they were playing these gigs for next to no money.
yeah,
And the Cafe Noir and Gertie's and all those places. And they knew each other, and they're so similar. They're both Jewish.
both Jewish.
They both go by pseudonyms. They both
Created a history of their own
yeah, their own history.
background.
Yeah, they've got a lot more in common than
Yeah.
people think. Can I read you a poem?
Yes, and I love to, and I'm just, before you do, I'm just saying to people, if you've got any questions, please type them in now because there's a delay in the feed that I'm getting. And just a quick, you pointed out the picture there of an actual signed by who? Show us the, yeah,
It's Mark Twain's autograph.
Oh, I love it. Mark Twain's autograph.
Yeah.
So read us a poem, and where's it from? It's your own poetry, isn't it?
Yeah, it's my own poem, and in a way, it's a response to words of advice to young people kind of thing that you raised. This is called The Good Man. If you call in the morning, don't be afraid to wake me. I've been up since dawning, thinking just wherever my thoughts take me. I've tried to read my way into paradise, and I've really tried to understand the ingredients that are needed in a man to really make him a man. I will not plead confusion. I will never, ever say that hope is gone. I'm under no illusion. I'm not lost. I'm never lost, but I'm so often wrong. And there's a child. They say it's my child on the pavement. And there's a girl, looks like my wife, smiling at me. The reflection of salvation lives in every person that I see. I'm a coward for crucifixion. In this body, there's no drop of martyr's blood. If I'm bound for annihilation, I'm afraid you've got to send the bill to God. I've read every single kind of Bible, and I've really tried to understand the ingredients that are needed in a man to really make a good man.
I love it. I love it. What's the cover of the book? Is it a book of your poems? And
it's just a bunch of poems. Singers who've been in lockdown have been able to go through and
yeah, hold up the cover for us, just so people can.
Just poems to read aloud. I read aloud.
Yeah.
The Toomba, every month we've got a meeting, and
yeah.
then I read at the music festival, and then James Joyce Bloom's Day. We've got all these events.
Yeah,
that's what I do. You play in a band, and the best thing I ever did was stop playing guitar
and focus on the words.
Just get up and read.
It's looking like my feed is just not keeping up to date, so I know there's questions coming, but I think what we'll do is that if you like, feel free to kind of immerse yourself into the social media thread of comments below at your leisure. And before we go, is there anything you can think of that we didn't cover that we needed to cover? Things you'd like to comment on the Glacier view? Um, advice to avoid future drama of a similar nature?
I can't give people advice like that either. I'm not a theologian. I'm just a writer.
Yeah.
I do whatever I want. I've lived my life that way, really. I got unemployed and detached from churches and politics or from anything. And I just like doing whatever I want. I write a bit, you know. I wrote a novel while we were in lockdown, but I won't get it published. I don't send things off. And wrote a bit of a family history with my cousin Stuart. He helped, and I won't get that published either. I just, you know, just live a life of you know, doing whatever I like.
Immersing yourself in
Just,
creative impulses.
yeah, whatever I want to do. I paint a bit.
Yeah.
I did a picture. I'll show you, seeing as well.
Yeah.
So we talked about Martin Sharp and spirituality, and he was very influenced by Arthur Stace, you know, who wrote Eternity.
Yeah.
Well, there's a biography you can get.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Right. Yeah, and I read the biography. It was published by a Christian press, and I met the author. He came up here to Warramoo Anglican Church or something. And in the biography, somewhere along the line, it said that Arthur Stace came to Katoomba. And you know how he wrote Eternity 500,000 times all over Sydney.
Yeah.
It said he came to Katoomba. So I painted Katoomba with Arthur Stace.
Oh, wow. I love it. That is fantastic. You just did that in the ISO, or you've done that previously?
What does I say? Oh, yeah.
ISO.
Oh, no, I did that previously.
Right, you're right. I love it. It looks like an oil, is it? Oil painting?
No, it's Liquitex acrylics.
Okay.
And so that's Katoomba, the station's here.
Yeah, I love it.
The Irish pub, and here the tourist centre. and what the book said was that there was a Christian tea, I don't know, what is it, like a little caravan or tent for tea where you could get a cup of tea.
Oh, yes.
So he went to that, and near there, he wrote Eternity.
Wow.
Had him write Eternity. And I tried to find out the spot. I went to the Christian place in Katoomba that runs those things, and they didn't know.
Yeah.
Even know who Arthur Stace was.
Really? When was the last time you went into an actual Adventist church and poked your head through the door?
Seriously, I can't even remember.
Do you have kids?
3 kids, 3 grandkids, yeah.
What would you say to one of your grandkids if they said, "Hey, Grandpa, I've decided to become a Seventh-day Adventist"?
They wouldn't. I think they'd seen enough with my parents.
Mm.
I think that'd put anyone off for life.
Yeah.
I mean, my father was a really good chess player, and I mean, he should have stuck to it. But you know, then he's telling me, you know, you can't play on Friday night. He's just telling me all this stuff, and I'm just thinking, look, I'm not saying he would have been a champion or anything, but he didn't try. You know, he didn't give it a shot, and I'm sort of a bit. You've only got one shot at life. You might as well try, man.
I know.
And go, look, I've got to go to church, you know, and you know, it's a cop out. Just sit there, and do what you're here to do.
I know. I know too well.
I'm sure you do, Peter.
Mate,
You're doing well, though. You're
I,
doing.
I'm really, really happy. I've got, Renee and Ruby 6 and 7, and just we have little fires out in the backyard at night and a cold wintry night, and not roast marshmallows. What do you call it when you burn the little marshmallows? And we've got a new little puppy dog Spot, and I'm enjoying the interviews I've been doing. Like there's probably one, two, three, four, five. There's 6 different shows I'm running on different platforms, and I'm having a ball.
And you're working out, working something out of your own system.
Yeah.
I'm
And
sure.
if you live in the now, it's like the past doesn't matter at all. If you're true to yourself in the now, and you're living in the now, and you're breathing in the air, and you're being creative right now, all the tragedies of the past just kind of disperse.
That's true. I often say that about pain,
Yeah.
when you're experiencing pain, it's just horrible. But the thing is, when it stops, you can't even remember it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You broke your arm or something. It's But
yeah,
then it stopped. And you think, oh well, that's
yeah,
gone.
yeah, yeah. And I hopefully, in talking about some of these painful topics for a lot of people that it definitely has been painful. I even got a lump in my throat when I was chatting to the co-founder of the One Project the other day, as I talked about the day I left the church, and I said, this is my last Sabbath as a Seventh-day Adventist, and just recounting that in my memory, I just choked up about it. But it's an interesting balance to be able to just share some of these stuff from the past, but to realise you're also healing and that you're living life to its full concurrently.
Yeah.
Mate, it's been so good chatting with you. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, I hope I made you laugh.
Mate, you've made me laugh. You've got me thinking. I'm going to go and buy a couple of books online now. I'm going to go and reread Edges.
Oh, yeah.
Where can people get that?
That's on Amazon,
Right.
and some of my other books are on ETT has published my Martin Sharp biography,
Yeah.
and they've got off Amazon 1967 and the Tiny Tim one.
Oh, good.
I think some of those were available on things like Booktopia and
Yeah.
the
And your
Martin
Michael Chamberlain book as well.
you probably can only get that second hand.
Okay. If you've got any links to share, just cut and paste them into the comments below. It'd be great to kind of have people rediscover Lowell Tarling.
Well, I've got a lot of tapes, I tell you what.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Of what? Tapes of music or tapes of what?
tapes of Michael Chamberlain,
Oh, with your interviews and stuff.
all those interviews, all the interviews. So I'd have a wine box full of Chamberlain tapes,
Wow.
say 70 Tiny Tim. I've got about that many about Martin, 350 actually about Martin. And then all the people I've interviewed, Slip Dusty, John Howard, just, well-known people.
Mate, we should do a podcast together of just the interviews of Lowell Tarling. Imagine that.
Well, if you want to put the work into it, that's all right. I'm not going to. I wouldn't mind selling them to the National Library or something, but they don't seem to have any money at the moment.
No one's got any money.
No.
Oh man. Well, I tell you what, that's a rich treasure trove though. That can't be lost. That's got to be digitized. Oh well, we might have to talk about that. SDAQ&A Publishing. Well, mate, thanks again. Hopefully this has gone live and we weren't cut off. We'll soon find out.
Okay.
Might have to do it all again.
Have a good evening doing your fireside songs.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and like I said, I'm going to be singing Father in Heaven. I got it out the other day, and I think I've remembered all the melody and the chords.
Is that on YouTube?
No, it'll be on the Campfire Songs group. You should join and just sneak in and have a listen, and then you can leave the group if you if you want.
Okay.
That'll be 6:30 tonight. The pressure's on now. I better go and make sure I've brushed it up.
Yeah.
Steve Peets does a way better version of it than me.
I've heard him do it. Yes.
He's got a really good version of it.
Well, it's like a lot of songs that I've written. I can't sing them myself.
Mm.
So all these songs that I've done, that Robert sings them great.
I tell you what, I loved that. Remember when you guys got together some years ago and you did a Galilee concert at Avondale College?
Right.
That was so good. You, Stephen, no, me and Felix, that's right, were support act. That was a really good night.
Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah.
I felt so guilty that I didn't thank Linda Brooks for her help.
Linda's in this group. She'll be watching. So
Well,
give her
thanks for publishing the Galilee book.
yeah. I tell you what, Linda, if you're watching, please put a link to wherever that's available. That'd be great.
And thanks for what you did in that concert. That was great. You know, just all coming back together again, and all still friends. And I think Ganilevich has filmed it, and I think you can. Yeah, I think it might be on YouTube or something.
Oh, wow.
It's still around. Yeah.
Oh, great. We'll dig into that as well. Well, mate, have a good night, and I'm planning to come down to Katoomba actually in a little while, so we might catch up at the Irish pub there.
All right, you've got my phone number?
Yep. Oh,
And we'll leave it there. We're jumping back to 2025 if you're listening on the podcast. I did say there'd be something on at 6:30 tonight. That was 5 years ago when I used to run a weekly Friday night campfire songs where we would sing a lot of the old classics. And it was good. We used to get 300 or 400 people joining in every week. I should resurrect it. So, that completes that particular interview there. Season 2, episode 19. And coming up, let's have a quick look. Coming up next week. Oh, it's the Milton Hook one. That'll be interview number 20. And that's a fascinating one there. I'll look forward to that one as well. Thanks again for joining me today. It's been wonderful reading all the comments. And as always, I love when you guys join in there. Ron Kelly is coming on the show soon. Don McAdams, Warren Trenchard. It's going to be an interesting few weeks ahead. So stick around. What day is it tomorrow? Actually, it might be tomorrow. What day? Yes, tomorrow I will be playing the Milton Hook. As I said, I'm trying to get as many out of this series into the public realm as possible, as fast as I can. So Milton Hook tomorrow. You will not want to miss that one. It's a beauty. So until then, live long and prosper. See ya.